To be joined right now by Conservative MP Matt Vickers, now the Shadow Crime and Policing Minister. Very good morning to you.
Good morning. Long time no see.
Long time no see. Thank you very much indeed for joining us. Lots I want to talk to you about. Let's start, though, with what's going on in Syria and statements in the House of Commons yesterday, although no one bothered to tell Foreign Secretary David Lammy that the decision had already been made on actually putting a pause on all those asylum claims from Syrians, obviously fleeing the Assad regime, which no longer exists. How many people from Syria should we take as asylum seekers?
I think, we've got to look at, if all of these people were apparently here fleeing from Assad, then, what reason do they have to be here anymore? I think it's right that we pause the thing. I think it's right we see what unfolds in Syria. It's a very fast-moving situation. A week ago, we wouldn't have comprehended what's gone on now. I think it's right that we pause things, we slow down, we see what comes. But actually, realistically, the number of people sat in that asylum backlog at the moment who are apparently fleeing from Assad have no reason to be here anymore. So, yeah.
No, 1 in 6 people granted refugee status here in the UK are from Syria or claim to be from Syria. We've got 6,500 claiming asylum, most of who have arrived on Channel boats, we understand.
Yeah, but, this huge problem, there's a big chunk of it resolved, hopefully. There's no reason to be travelling here via the safe country that is France anymore.
Well, yeah, we shall see if that is the case. What do you make of the possible jihadi threat, though? Thousands of jihadis being held in camps in northern Syria. US troops actually helping sort of police that area. But there's a fear now, obviously, prisoners who are sort of activists against Assad being freed, and we've seen some extraordinary scenes in prison outside Damascus, but also these prison camps where thousands are being held. We're understanding they include 70 Brits, 15 men, 20 jihadi brides, including Shamima Begum, and 40 children. We're told by Sir Alex Younger, the former head of MI6, that they pose a chronic threat to the West's security if some of these people do get freed and come to Britain. What should be done to keep us safe?
Do you know what? The entire situation in Syria is huge. It's huge. We saw everybody sort of, delighted at the fact that Assad had gone. But in real terms, what come next could have equally, if not more, devastating consequences for the Middle East and for us. We've got to see what unfolds there. Work with international partners to make sure that it works out in our best solutions. But I think it's too early to tell exactly what can be done and how it should be done and what the consequences are going to be. So I think there's a lot of watching to be done. We've got to work with the security services and see what unfolds and take a watching brief and pay a hell of a lot of attention as an international community. We saw the UN Security Council meet yesterday to look at what comes next and what our part in that is.
Yeah, well, indeed, lots of people will say, well, it's not for us to play a part. They may not have much interest. We are talking about a jihadist prescribed terrorist organisation taking part, and suddenly everyone's going, oh no, these are the nice guys. They're not the good guys. They're not the nice guys. They've been executing people willy-nilly in the parts of Syria that they've been in control of. I can't see this going any better than it did in Afghanistan with the Taliban, who were going to be all, the new Taliban light. Well, that's not worked out very well for women not allowed to leave their homes or even speak outside their homes. Do you agree with Reform MPs who say that we should, in terms of the Syrians who are already here as refugees, claiming asylum, going through that process, already granted it, that we should be immediately deporting them?
Well, I think you've got to look at each case in its own rights. But I think, the vast majority of those cases now are baseless, aren't they? If you were coming here to flee Assad, there's no reason to be fleeing anymore. I imagine they should be happy to go back, shouldn't they?
Well, I suppose they're wanting, if they're sensible, they're wanting to wait and see what happens, aren't they? Let's talk about what happens here in the UK, because we were just discussing on the show, it's amazing how many police services have been putting out, police forces, I should say, been putting out messages on social media warning people to be careful ahead of Christmas shopping. If you're going out to markets, we're here to keep you safe, but, be careful, And now, a lot of this is not about pickpocketing. It's not having your phone stolen. It's about some other kind of threat, which is never very precisely identified, but it does seem to involve having very large steel bollards erected around pretty much every shopping area in Britain. Do you know why we should be afraid when we go Christmas shopping this year?
I think, there's two elements to it, though, isn't there? There's all these police forces that, crikey, if you go back a few years and you'd seen people walking around with some of the kit that our police officers are carrying now in some of these busy city centres, or you'd seen these bollards being erected, you would be beside yourself. You would think it was going to be huge. But actually, I think part of it is around the changing threat. But the other part of it is about the fact that we risk assess everything to the nth degree and are probably disproportionate in some situations. You know, we ask people to consider all the threats and respond accordingly. That sometimes goes to the nth degree, meaning we do a hell of a lot more, scare the life out of everybody.
So you think the police are overreacting? Because I think it's always an overreaction until someone drives a lorry into families seeing Santa in his grotto, or when they set off a backpack bomb, isn't it? I mean, it's always an overreaction until that point. But why do we accept that this is something that's normal and that this is something that we're just going to live with in this country, that when we go Christmas shopping, there are bollards to stop people smashing into us, and we're going to be told to be wary of, well, this unknown threat? We all know what it is. It's Islamist terrorism.
Well, we talk about terrorism, we talk about people with very serious mental health problems as well, and some of the things that we've seen, some of the behaviours that we see from people now, for whatever reason, are off the chart. They're just things you would never see before. You would have never assumed that human beings were capable of doing such things to one another, and therefore we've probably got to prepare for all eventualities. But doing so at the nth degree in town centres across the country.
Maybe part of the preparation would be that the people who pose a threat shouldn't be in this country in the first place.
Well, each case in its own right, but it's not for me to assume that everybody who behaves in a certain way because of where they come from or what they do. But you know what? We talk about immigration, we talk about borders, we talk about the cultural impact as well as the financial cost of all of this. Horrendous situation that we've got to with immigration, but I wouldn't like to tie the two together, and I'm sure I'll get...
No, I know politicians don't like to tie the two together, but I'm afraid that they are. But there we are. Just finally on this issue, Shamima Begum's lawyer has said that her hopes of returning to the UK, despite having her British citizenship stripped from her, have been bolstered by the fall of Bashar al-Assad and the risk of her being, just somehow left out in the Syrian desert. Do you think that she should be allowed to come back to Britain?
It is utterly balmy. We've been through the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court has said no further right to appeal. I mean, the problem is that actually, change of government, we know that last time Labour was speaking out in her favour. We know that we've seen the current government, members of the current government, opposing the deportation of foreign criminals. So you kind of got to wonder whose side they're on. But it's been through the courts. It's been to the nth degree. This court.
So not gonna happen. Let's also talk about the situation we've got with what criminals are doing as part of their punishment. We know this government is very, very, very keen on not putting people behind bars. I mean, women apparently shouldn't really go to prison at all. But certainly those who are given short sentences shouldn't face short sentences. They should be doing community service or being tagged and at home. Now we understand from a new set of documents that criminals are being allowed to work from home for community sentences. So they're not even out, picking up litter, not, getting rid of graffiti or the like. They're sitting at home on a laptop doing some sort of online course as part of their community sentence. I don't think that's what most people would think of as a punishment for a crime. As a shadow Home Office minister, is that good enough for you?
Do you know what part of these community sentences is about people actually going out, earning their keep, doing something. But the other part of it is about justice being seen to be done in that community that's been affected, and that's a huge part of it. People want to know that when something happens, there's consequences. They want to see people living out those consequences in and around them so they know it counts for something. But also, part of going out and being amongst other people and speaking to the probation officers or whoever is running that community service is about learning the lessons from what you've done. You're not going to do that sat at home multitasking, because whatever you might have on one screen, Christ knows what you might have on the other screen if you're so inclined. You might be double dipping, doing your community service on one laptop whilst committing the next crime on the other laptop. It's scary. It's not.
Well, it's a joke. That said, if your lot, I know you're a former deputy chair of the Conservative Party when they were in office. If your lot built enough prisons, because you started sending people to prison for longer, which I think is a good thing, and not letting people out quite as soon, which is a good thing, but you didn't bother building the prisons to actually accommodate those people. You didn't build enough. You know that, I know that, and National Audit Office reports and everything confirmed that. Why didn't you?
We had the biggest prison building program.
You didn't build enough.
Victorian ages. The fact we were choosing to lock people up for longer and give the worst offenders longer sentences, it was the right thing to do.
Yeah, but you didn't build enough prisons for the next lot arriving.
Of course we should have been building more prisons than we were, but we were building them at the biggest rate since the Victorian era. We were building them at a hell of a pace. We just weren't building them quick enough to deal with all of the horrific people that were coming from.
No thinking through of policy. I mean, we're seeing even more of that from the Labour government right now.
Actually, let's go back to the case in point that one of the biggest problems with our prison population is, isn't it, about 12% of them are foreign national offenders?
Yep.
Well, only we're not building them quickly enough. We weren't deporting them quickly enough. Although we saw all of the challenges.
If only you'd been in government and able to do things.
Oh, we see a judicial system that worked against us at every fortnight.
If only the government was in a position to change the law and do things.
Well, yeah, but you look at cases like the Shamima Begum case where it goes to the nth degree, and you've now got a lawyer saying that we should be. Yeah. You should open the door again and have another go.
Here's the thing: I spent years as a political editor rowing with ministers, and I know you're now a shadow minister, talking about we can't do anything because of the EU. Well, we got out of the EU, and now we can't do anything because of the courts. Government's supposed to be in charge. They're supposed to run things and do the job. Can't keep making excuses. Someone stopped us doing it. You were in power 14 years. You had plenty of time.
Well, I wasn't personally in power.
No, but your party was.
But actually, I think you make a very good case. But in real terms, the way that this system works, when you see the fight that we have over ridiculous cases like Shamima Begum, like lots of other foreign national offenders, and people in this country who will go out of their way to prevent us deporting such people, government, people who are now in the cabinet who were opposing the deportation of foreign national offenders. They're now running the country.
Yep. Lucky old us. Well, if you guys hadn't made such a fist of it, that wouldn't be the case, eh? Talking of fists, Chancellor Rachel Reeves has said that she wants to take an iron fist to Whitehall spending, massive cuts. I've been told Downing Street, if it's not one of the top priorities, by the way, immigration is not one of the top priorities of the government, then you're not going to get the money. Do you think there's going to be big savings, that there's going to be a big cut in the number of civil servants and Whitehall spending?
If there ever was, they're not the people to do it. We had plans in place to reduce the number of civil servants. They've completely ditched that as a proposal. In the first 25 days in office, this government spent £25 billion. They talked about this £22 billion black hole. They're spending 70 billion more than they were before the budget. It's a disaster. We've got an energy company. They bought an energy company that doesn't produce any energy. We're seeing money doled out, public sector pay rises that just off the charts. Can you imagine being told you're getting a 15% pay rise, a 22% pay rise?
It was over 2 years, and it was after years of not having pay rises. I mean, they're still going to be paid less than they were in 2010 in the real terms.
It's ridiculous. 15%. Train drivers on 65k getting a grand pay rise. That is insane.
No, I'm with you, absolutely with you on that. Just final, very quick. Do you think everything would be running better in this country if Keir Starmer was occasionally in the country and not off on another foreign tour?
I don't know. It might be in our interest to keep him out of the country. I'm not sure.
Matt Vickers, Shadow Crime and Policing Minister, Tory MP, thank you for that. Sam Armstrong?
Well, look, I think Matt makes a number of good points, but as you keep putting back to him, the Conservative government did let people down on a number of issues. And so far, I'm not sure the Conservative Party is doing enough, actually, to apologise for parts of their record.
Could do with some policies sometime soon as well, Kemi Bay. Some policies, please.